Backpack Broadcasting continues to bring you the best original sports content, but now you can get more of the content you love. For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus content, including behind-the-scenes footage and interviews from the Sports Walk, Sideline Stories, or the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. All this exclusive content comes via Patreon. There are tiered levels of patronage, and each Backpack Broadcasting patron receives exclusive perks. Your support helps Backpack Broadcasting create more of the original content that you love. Visit Backpack Broadcasting's Patreon page and become a patron today. What's good, everybody? We are back. Ain't Hard to Tell podcast, episode 229. Dexter Henry Bryan Fonseca back. We had a little break. You know, a lot was going on in life.
Still is.
Yeah,
Still is, I would say.
Still is. A lot was going on. Y'all maybe thought we were gone, but we had, sometimes you got to recharge and reset. And, we're back. And I think Brian and I were looking at, there's never a perfect time for anything, but when's a good time to come back? And, we found out last month Nas was going to come out with a new album, King's Disease 3, which we're going to talk a lot about. And, the album dropped and it felt like a good time to come back. You know what I'm saying? Felt like a good time. Brian, what's up, man? How you doing?
I agree. Was busy, still busy, but we got some things going. We can get into that another time, but happy to be back doing the show, obviously. And,
Yep.
I mean, the perfect timing. There was no perfect time, as you said, but like as soon as Nas announced that he was coming out with an album, as soon as we heard the album, we were like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to.
It's time.
We're gonna do something on this.
It's like it's time. We had to do it. Yeah, man. I'm good, busy, a lot of changes, things going on with work, but it's been a good time. Busy sports season. So we're back, to talk some sports, some hip hop. We're going to do, we will get into that a little bit later. As everybody knows who's been rocking with the podcast, we are now we passed our 4-year anniversary. 5 years. My bad. I'm supporting ourselves. Yeah. 5 years back in September. So as you know, through the end of the season, obviously basketball season is back, football season in full swing. End of the year is coming up. We will do our hip hop awards again. Top 10 hip hop albums and that whole thing that's doing. And we'll see where this album, King's Disease 3, fits into the conversation. But let's get right into it, man. Nas and Hit Boy dropped King's Disease 3, dropped on Friday, 11/11. We got it. We knew it was coming. Okay. We knew it was coming before the 2 months ago. Nas had some bars on Magic, the EP that dropped that was Christmas Eve last year. That was absolutely fantastic and still one of the things I bumped the most this year. So anything that we've been getting with Nas has just been gravy. Folks, Nas has dropped 4 projects in 2 years. 4 projects in 2 years.
After not having one for 6 until the EP we won't discuss. And then there was a compilation album after that.
Yes, and everything has gotten better since that EP that we will not discuss. You know what I'm saying? Everything has gotten better. And people, if you're watching live with us, see a bunch of you rocking lives, hit that like button. Let us know what you think of the album in the comments. We will be discussing with you guys what we think of the album and want to hear what you guys think of the album. But B, for him to drop this many projects in 2 years, I think 2 years ago, if I asked you, like when we knew about the first King's Disease 1 coming out, I remember us doing a show and the hype for it. I don't think any of us thought we were going to get 4 projects, 3 King's Diseases and 1 Magic EP. I don't think the biggest Nas fan, and we are Nas fans, so for full transparency, for those who don't watch the show or don't know, big Nas fans, I don't think any of us would have thought this was going to happen.
No.
4 projects?
We weren't sure we'd get a second one. No, we were like, maybe we'll get a second one.
Yeah, we're like, yo, this is a one-off. I remember Brian saying, look, this is when we talked about the first King's Disease. The chemistry is great with Hit Boy. We talked about it on that project. It was a very tight project, felt very fluid. We liked all of that. But to see the chemistry keep going, we get King's Disease 2. We get Magic, which I think is absolute fire and one of Nas's best projects. And we get King's Disease 3. And Brian, I'm going to start with you first because I listened to it, a midnight release. You decided not to. You told me you wanted to get some rest. You had a busy day.
I would have still been up. I wouldn't have gone to sleep because I know myself. I'm like, if this project's good, I'm not going to go to sleep till 3 a.m. So I'm not going to do that.
But I laughed because by like 1, 2 o'clock the next day, you hit me up and you was like, yo, I'm ready on my third listen, son. I'm ready to listen to this 3 times. And I was like, yeah, that's what I expected. I expected that already. So tell me, I always like to do this because sometimes with albums, we talked about this with Greg Sylvander where we talk about Mr. Morale and Big Steppers. Sometimes you have that first listen and you feel away and then you listen more and it can go either way. What was that first listen like for you? When you went through that first listen, what was the vibes like for you on that?
It was Friday, like early afternoonish or morning. No, morning. And I was like, yo. I was like really like, oh man, wait, from Ghetto Reporter right off rip. And I'm like, God damn, this is his first verse? Like already? Like it was really good. And from that standpoint, just moving forward, I'm 5 tracks in and I'm like, have all the other albums been this good to start off? Because we're going to talk a little bit more about like the album damn near track by track, but how it begins really caught me. And I found myself like just 3-4 tracks in wanting to replay some of the other songs that I had just heard. And I was like, wait, I got to finish the whole album first and go through it. I'm glad I didn't do that because there's a lot of songs with replay value throughout. So for me, it was just great because I didn't expect that we'd get this project this year. I was surprised we even got Magic last year. Same. So usually, I hope Nas takes next year off because he just needs to just take the year off and just chill. Like 4 albums in this amount of time, I mean, it's tremendous. And I think that we're gonna talk a little bit about what this means for the discography, but we have a tendency for like, especially older acts, older rappers and other artists and other genres in general. We kind of like disregard their discography after a certain point because they're older, because it isn't up to par, or because like you just want to judge people based on their quote unquote musical prime. I feel like you have to take into account everything. And especially in this case, I think Nas really did a great job of strengthening his discography these last couple years with these projects, because these are up there somewhere. I don't know where exactly, because his discography, again, is very elite. It's maybe the most elite of the elite. And you're talking about 3 projects, King's Disease 1, 2, and 3, and then along with Magic, that could rival a lot of other Nas projects and are better than a lot of other Nas projects that we've heard before.
Well, see, that's the thing for me. I think I haven't got a number yet, but I will say this. I think all 4 of these Nas and Hit Boy projects are within his top 8 for sure. And we will go through this a little bit more. They are definitively within his top 8.
I gotta think about. I was thinking top 10. Top 8 is like
they're definitely in the top 8. And there's albums that they're undeniably better than, like that EP We Shall Not Speak Of, and that other album in the late 90s that we will not speak of. That is definitively better than. Right? There's no doubt that it's better than those for sure. Right? And then there's other albums where I'm just like, look, and we'll get into this. We'll get into this later because we're going to talk about the discography. But I like you, because you talked about this. We're going to get to the songs too. But first of all, and I texted Brian this next day. Brian and I were texting, and I said, hey, the intro streak continues. Okay? He comes in.
The first thing you said. Yeah.
He comes in with Ghetto Reporter and man, production's flames. Nas is spitting. It's great. Okay? It's just great. And there's a great start to this album. I think the first 3 tracks are really good. You could argue even the first 5 are just really, really great. It's just a good album. I'm liking it sonically. There's a little bit more. Hit Boy's a little lighter on the drums here. There's a little bit more soul samples influence on this album. that kind of speaks to me sonically, something that I really like. Not that I have disliked any of the production on all the Hit Boy albums. But one thing I like about this King's Disease run is a lot of them sound different. Like there's great production, but they all have sort of different edges to them and different sounds. And I like the little bit of the soul sample stuff that we heard here throughout this project in King's Disease. But my first listen through was like, damn, this is another really solid project from Nas. Somebody was asking me today, like, where I have it among the other Nas Hit Boy collaborations, and I'm not quite sure exactly where I want to put it yet. I was somebody that thought King's Disease 2 was not better than King's Disease 1 because I like the tightness of King's Disease 1, but I've sort of come around on that, where I like King's Disease 2 maybe a little bit more because I think some of the stronger songs are on there, although I would have liked that album to be a little tighter. My feelings, Brian, with King's Disease 2 and 3 are the same. I could have trimmed the fat a little bit. I would have loved if you got it down to about 14 songs. If I had to nitpick, I would have trimmed the fat a little bit. There's a couple songs where I'm like, I could do without that.
I have a couple also to your
but they're not bad. Like you know me,
yeah.
You know me and my cleaning the house, skip the track test. There's nothing on here I'm really gonna be like, oh yeah, I gotta go over and skip that. There's really nothing like that.
I don't have any skips really.
Yeah, like if it's playing and I played it through, I've been like kind of fine. If I've drove around with this for a little bit too, and if I'm like, oh, okay, I want to get to this song, I might do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But nah, man,
this skips.
Yeah, but this is a really good project that I feel like Nas fans should be excited about. And we'll get into that later. But let's get into the next topic on here with this. And everybody, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Retweet this if you're watching on Twitter. Let us know what you think about the Nas and Hit Boy new album, King's Disease 3, out now. Everybody, if you haven't listened to it, you should. If you're a hip hop fan, well, I would hope you'd been listening to it. You should. I think the question is going to come up. This is 4 projects we got from them. We talked about this. The third in the King's Disease installment, 4 in 2 years, which is crazy. For anybody who knows, not like that. To put it for perspective, if you don't know, you're younger, maybe you didn't follow Nas's whole career or been around for it as like I have. Nas didn't used to drop that often, okay? No. And especially in the 2000s and the last decade, in 2010s, really didn't drop 2 albums in that time, okay?
I can give you the years off the top of my head because I know.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a lot, so this is very frequent. And here's the thing: what do I worry about with frequency? Okay, somebody drops a lot and frequent. I'm assuming there's going to be lack of quality, except we don't have that. This isn't lack of quality. We're getting very high quality projects here with Nas and Hit Boy. Is KD3 the best project of the 4? What do you say, Brian?
I'm going to get to that. Let me just go through the albums real quick now that I'm thinking about it. Because Illmatic was 94. 96 was written. 97 is The Firm. That's a group album. 99, he had I Am and the one you don't want to mention. 2000 was like the QB thing that doesn't really count. 01 was Stillmatic. 02 was Lost Tapes and Godson. Lost Tapes was a compilation of like songs that, you know, people missed, whatever the case may be. It didn't make I Am, but it should have, whatever the case. Streets Disciple 04. There was a couple mixtapes around that 06, 08 period. Hip Hop is Dead 06, Untitled 08. Life is Dead 2012. Before that, 2010 was Distant Relatives. I almost forgot about that. Now it's Damian Marley. And then from 12 to like 18, there was nothing. Then there was the EP with the Wacko that we don't want to mention, that we're not going to mention. 2019, Lost Tapes 2, and then King's Disease in 2020, King's Disease 2 and Magic last year, and then King's Disease 3 this year. So I know all that off the top of my head. Maybe I missed a project or 2, but that's it. Yeah. Oh, the greatest hits in 07. That was the other one. But yeah, basically, as you can see, he didn't used to drop every single year. It was usually like every other year, which, you know, you kind of recommended. Like the formula kind of back in the day was you drop your project, the next year you spend that year hopping on other people's projects while working on your own behind the scenes, and you come out as a feature. He did this in 1995 after Illmatic. He was on Verbal Intercourse. He was on Eye for an Eye. You know what I mean? Like he was on other joints. And then he came back in 96. It was written. Then 97, he did some guest spots or whatever. And then 98 also. And then he released a project in 99. Like that's kind of how it went. But this project, right?
Yes.
Little history lesson, I guess. But this project, to me, it's kind of like Magic, but longer, if that makes sense. It's it was, you know, it was close to Magic in terms of like just how it sounded. how it felt also. A lot of the similar songs or whatever the case may be. To me, King's Disease had before getting to part 3, King's Disease 1 had more of a central theme, which was the King's Disease theme. KD2 kind of veered away from it, but was also a little bit better. And or at least the moments were higher. Like Death Row East, I've often said was the best of either of the first 2 King's Diseases. That was the best song. Moments was another song that was probably better than anything on King's Disease 1. I think you would agree with that. And I feel like this blended both King's Disease 1 and 2 and Magic. Like King's Disease 3 was like the perfect sort of sequel to all 3 of those projects. And it blended all of them. And I felt like there were certain songs that were like spin-offs or remixes or continuations of previous songs on those projects. Like Recession Proof, to me, felt like an extension of 10 Points from King's Disease 1. Done. Felt like an extension of Death Row East, like a version that was a little more underground than Death Row East. 30 felt like a better or a more boom bappy version of 27 Summers.
27 Summers, yeah.
And then Till My Last Breath, which I texted you this, that's spicy all grown up. That was the same type of bonus track or whatever. And I like spicy, but Till My Last Breath, that is my shit. To flip the Narco Edwin Diaz joint, and me as a Latino hearing that shit, like that's the song that I played the most.
And a Meth fan.
That's the song that I've played the most on this project.
Really?
That's the song that I've replayed the most because it's so hard. Like it's not the best song on the album.
No, I wouldn't say that.
But it's the hardest one. And sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, especially in the mindset I've been lately, you gotta put out certain songs to fit the mood or fit some mood that you're trying to go for. So to me, this overall, I'm still wrestling with whether or not it's better than Magic, but it's different because it's an LP. It's a better LP, I think, overall than King's Disease 1 and 2. Barely. I think they're all very close. I edged this out a little bit. Maybe I'm still in the moment. Magic still may be the best project, but it's also an EP. You know what I mean?
I think Magic is the best project. Like, I think it's the tightest. It's the most cohesive sound. It's the rawest. I loved it. It's like they focused on stripped down boom bap, hip hop, and Nas was just flowing great on it. It's a very tight project. I know it's an EP, but I think in terms of a project, I think it's the best of the work. In terms of the King's Disease albums, it's tough. I'm trying not to be too in the moment about this with KD3. There are, and I went back, I made myself a Nas and Hit Boy playlist of my favorites from each album. I was kind of going through it, and like, as much as I loved KD1, I think the highs on KD2 and 3, there are better songs on those albums. Brian mentioned Death Row East, Moments, Store Run, Nobody, Rare. Those are really some of the standouts for me on KD2. We'll get to our standouts here on KD3 a little bit later, guys. But there's some that I really like too, where it's just really grown. Here's where I think KD3, Brian, really actually works. I think Magic was why I like it in a way. It was very free. It was like Nas just lyrical showcasing, right? There's some themes to certain things like Ugly and Speechless and other songs, but there's a lot of lyrical flexing on the album. I can enjoy a project very tight like that with good production, and it works. This album, what I think is thematic, coming from the first one, King's Disease, I'm talking about, it's a lot of reminiscing from Nas here. A lot of looking back on what he's done and accomplished in the game, where his place is in the game and hip hop, and sort of how he's elevated himself in his career to this point, and that he loves the craft and wants to keep doing it. And he's sort of rid himself of this, the ego that you see a lot in hip hop. There's still braggadocio from Nas. There's still Nas talking about how he's the best and stuff, but it's not really around a lot of the materialism that you may have heard of certain parts of his career, particularly on that album we won't speak of from 1999.
And he's also doing it less than in King's Disease 2, to jump in.
Yes,
I feel like he's got more to the King's Disease theme in this one than he did in part 2.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this album is in the Elder Statesmen. You see it at the end of the album in a song like Beef, which also, Brian talked about some of the parallels here between songs, but I think that even parallels another song where Nas takes on personification in his work, which is "I Gave You Power," and now he's speaking from the perspective of Beef here. So there's these sort of parallels to different songs in his career that I think are dope. Beef, and then also "Don't Shoot," talking about gun violence in a nice way. I thought it was really well done in a mature way to close the album before you get to the bonus track. There's this maturity that you're hearing from Nas, this freedom in him making the music that he wants to make, talking about the subjects that he wants to talk about from the perspective of a 49-year-old man. And this is something I think that has been sort of missing in hip hop sometimes. You know, sometimes we see older rappers, they're still talking about the same shit they were when they were 24. And I'm like, son, what are you doing? Like, you should have grown or been in a different place in your life. And it's an interesting thing that Nas is able to talk about things previously, but then show the growth in where he is at this point in his life. And I think that's something that's part of his life. And I think he talks about this on the album at one point, that the King's disease, or shedding the King's disease, is sort of shedding the mentality that you might have previously had, you know, in your youth, and what's the growth. And I think his message to the future, and, you know, this talks about Black empowerment and home ownership, and, you know, not gun violence, and working together. I think one of the cool things he did on this album is on the song "Thun," which we'll get into. He has a reference that he's, you know, that Black people, brothers, can do anything together if they work together. And he references the fact that Ether is on Tidal, and you can listen to Ether on Tidal, obviously going back to the beef that he and Jay had, and that he and Jay have obviously overcome that, and they work together, and they're cool now. But then he also had a little playful line, which I thought was dope, in that, you know, he still listens and takes notes from Takeover and lets Jay know that it still ain't over. And I thought that was like a little, I laughed at that. I was like, that's really great. And yo, that's, for me as a hip hop fan, and everybody who knows this show, those are my two favorite rappers. Everybody knows that. And they went through their beef in the early part of the 2000s, and they had that. And I've always loved what they have evolved into in that relationship. They've hopped on tracks together, they work together. They're clearly cool. And that's good growth. And it shows you don't have to do that. No matter where you're from or the backgrounds you're from, and you don't have to do that. And it's great to see. And it's great to see you can joke about that on a song. Like, could you have imagined Nas joking about that in 05 or 06? Nah. That wasn't happening. Right. And so
he was so relaxed when he did it too, just in his
it was good. So like, I was happy to hear that. And I think when I listen to, even through these projects, I hear the growth, Brian. Like, it's the growth of him, even through these King's Disease projects. You see the self-growth. And I think that's dope, man. I think that's something, if you listen to these projects, you should take away from that. From it, I think it's good. Is it the best? I can't really say. It's still too early for me. I think all these projects are really good. You know, I think Magic is the best project. It's the tightest project. I think it's the most focused project. I think it's the most consistent production. I think that's the best project. So I'm going to go with Magic. As far as the four projects, I think that Magic is the best project. It's the one I think is gonna, listen, for me, Magic might be in the top 5 of Nas's stuff for me. It might be easily for me. Yeah, that's how high I am on Magic. Like, Magic might be in the top 5 for me. That's how high I am on that project, and I love that project.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll with this one. I'm gonna roll with King's Disease 3. Also because, like, I feel like it feels more like an album to me, in terms of the themes and the themes that it sticks to and things of that nature. We're going to get to our standouts in a second, but the standouts are also some of the reasons why. Because in listening to this, like, I feel like the high points are high. I don't know how high yet. We got to still, like, look at that or whatever. I always reference, like, could it be a top 25 Nas song? And now I'm going to have to probably expand that to 50 because there's just a lot more joints that he has coming out. And look, he hinted at, and this is something that you've been waiting for longer than me, but I've been waiting for it too. The DJ Premier joint. Yeah. The DJ Premier album that still might happen. It's kind of crazy to think about that he has 4 projects with Hit Boy and none with DJ Premier out yet. But if he's gonna, to me, if Hit Boy's gonna get this out of him, I feel great saying DJ Premier is gonna get a lot out of Nas. It's fucking Premier. You know what I mean? Who
was it? Because we've talked about this in the pod. Who was it? It was like a couple years ago. I think it was after the first King's Disease. It might have been after 2. I think it was after 2. He did an interview and somebody asked him about it, and he was like, he gave a face like, yo, it's going to happen. Like he
I think he
kind of
put
let
his
it.
finger over his lips, like he couldn't
Yeah,
say much, like
I think it's happening. Also, remember Nas and Premier did release a song this year that was on the DJ Premier EP, Hip
yeah,
Hop 50 Volume 1, and that song sounded really good. It was really dope.
yeah.
One of my favorite tracks this year. So listen, if anybody knows, for me, that is easily my most anticipated hip hop album of all time. Probably number 2 behind it is Kendrick and J. Cole, their long rumored album that I don't think is ever going to come out now. But the Nas
Black Hippie
with
neither.
Nas with Primo. Everybody's been waiting on that forever, since the 90s. We've been waiting on it. It needs to happen. I think Nas is in a good space. Brian, you know I'm a fan of this, and we've talked about this from King's Disease 1. I'm a huge fan of people locking in with one producer. You know how we love the Royce and Premier Prime albums. Those have been fantastic. Prime 3 is coming. That will be on the way. We know that's coming. These albums where people lock in with one producer, I love them. I love artists to do more of them. I was talking with somebody the other day, my boy Vic. I was talking about I'd love to see Kendrick do one with Dre. I think that would be fantastic. There's a lot of these I would love to see. And yeah, we got this with Nas and Hit Boy, and we got 4 of them.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I got you hyped now. I got you hyped.
Kendrick and Dre for an album? That would be, oh my God.
I agree. I want that. Give me that. Like, there's just some people you love to see lock in, and I think it will be really good. But like, look, we got 4 of these. I love that he hinted that. When I heard that bar, I immediately got happy. I think it's going to happen, and I think it will be. I think that's something that has a lot of hype behind it, but I do believe it will deliver because they have great chemistry through all the songs that they've done through their career. And they have, before the song that dropped this summer, they hadn't done a song together in quite some time. So a whole project, man, I'm ready. My body's ready for that.
Before we get to our standouts, because we're about to do that, how do you feel, just in like 1 or 2 minutes, how do you feel about there being basically no guests on this or Magic?
Oh, I love that.
I feel like that's something that you really
Magic
like. For me, I really
right?
liked it.
Magic had A$AP Rocky, right? And so they had one. I like no guest appearances. Nas even always used to boast about it. My first album had no famous guest appearances.
Yeah.
On Illmatic.
It was
I like to.
And it was,
I want to hear a lot. I want to hear a lot from the artist. I want to hear what the artist has to say, where he's at, where he's trying to work, and showcase his skills. Guest appearances are cool sometimes. When he used it, we had more on KD1 and KD2. And maybe that's part of the reason you like this project more too.
I think so.
Maybe it is. Maybe that is part of it too. You get to see Nas just say what he wants to say and do his thing. So
not that guests don't add anything, right?
No.
Like there's a reason why albums have guests, podcasts have guests, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just great to lock in, especially when it's just you and that producer. You know what I mean? When it's just Nas and Hit Boy. And I think for me, this also separates it because then it's like Nas gets to focus on the theme. We all love Foxy Brown's verse on Full Circle in the first King's Disease album. That verse had shit to do with the topic that everyone else was rapping about. You know what I mean?
I liked her verse. But like one thing I will say about Nas when he's done album features on these projects, I think they've worked very well. We talked about this on King's Disease 1, whether it was Big Sean and Dom Toliver, Anderson .Paak. We talked about the features on the joint with Foxy, which is the title is escaping me right now. There were good features on it. Obviously, Full Circle, King's Disease 2, Lauryn Hill stole the show for me there with a feature there. Even the YG and A Boogie with the Hoodie, it's really good. So
Eminem,
excuse me. Yeah,
Eminem also with EPMD 2.
Yeah,
with EPMD.
Even though I think EPMD 2 wasn't needed because I like the first one off the soundtrack that was on. But yeah,
it's an acceptable Eminem verse. I'll take it.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Dex is still reeling from a recent illness. Another reason why we haven't recorded lately was we both got sick very recently.
Yeah, we both got sick and got something out of my throat.
non-COVID related illnesses, I will say. But I think we should get to the standouts now because we're about halfway through.
Wait, what?
We
Excuse
got
me.
one more thing. If you can make it through, we.
I can make it. Excuse me.
Jesus, the
Damn.
audio listeners are gonna love this. It's cool though, roll with the punches. You know what I'm saying?
What I wanted to talk about, excuse me.
Has the perception of Nas' discography changed? And this is something that I was getting at early on. I think it should. I think it has. I think it should. I've seen a lot of people saying, yo, Hit Boy has really kind of re-energized him, refocused him, brought him back in a way. And people are saying how great it is to hear Nas like this. And with Hit Boy in particular, I think this elevates him, no doubt. Like both of these guys got together and elevated each other. That happens sometimes in sports. It happens sometimes in hip hop. It happens sometimes where like boxers will get with the new trainer. Like there was a certain energy when Miguel Cotto found Freddie Roach and they got together. Then Miguel Cotto became the middleweight champion after knocking out Sergio Martinez. There's a certain energy when two teammates get together for whatever the common goal is in whatever sport. We've seen that happen with a lot of different places. Most notably, obviously, with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Bosh, and then later on with Kevin Durant going to Golden State, whatever. It feels like one of those things where it's like two greats, one who's an all-time great and one who's been on his way, Hit Boy, who's on an all-time run right now, who's going to be an all-time great probably after this. They've really cemented themselves in terms of like as a duo. And I think in turn, Nas has brought in a certain energy and revitalized this latter half of his career, because after Life is Good, if Nas never put anything else out, we'd still be like, yo, this is a top whatever discography of all time. Some would say top 5, some would say top 10, some would say top 1 or 1 or 2. And then you throw in the couple projects that he had after, people were probably going to just ignore those, the Lost Tapes 2 and that other EP. Then King's Disease 1 comes out and it's like, all right, then King's Disease 2, and then Magic, and then this. And all of these have done pretty well commercially, considering that Nas is just doing this through mass appeal. And I don't think it's not like he's like shelling out all this money to get like radio play and all this shit, because that shit doesn't matter anymore, right? People are just going to listen to what they want. They have deals with Spotify promoting this album. They on King's Disease 1 and 2, they got heavy rotation on ESPN and on Magic also. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna hear this during NBA games, during highlights and commercial breaks and things of that nature. We're gonna hear songs like Beef, songs like 30, songs like maybe even Ghetto Reporter, and of course, songs like Till My Last Breath, which is a song that I like, that we're gonna talk about some standouts anyway in a second. So yeah, I think the perception is that it's changed because it's really cemented Hit Boy in a way that I don't feel like he was prior. I thought people really liked him, but then working with Nas puts him in a different class. And then Nas being able to have this in his discography, aging better than maybe anyone in hip hop ever, arguably, really, really solidifies his discography even more and adds 4 projects that Dexter's over here arguing is in his top 8. And this is Nas, right? Like to say that Post Life is Good, he has 4 projects that are probably definitely in his top 8, top 10 at least. I would probably say top 10 for me. I got to think about it a little bit more, but I would say so. Like that's an extreme strengthening of someone's discography, I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's a strong argument now that most of the best work of Nas' career actually is in the latter part of his career. I don't think that's really crazy.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because I would say
what is the latter part 2010 on? Because I think that's probably the case you're making. Because then you're talking about Distant Relatives, Life is Good, and these 4 projects, basically.
Yeah, but that's
and it's like if you stack those up with the best ones before that. So yes, sure, you have Illmatic, but then you also have Stillmatic. It Was Written, God's Son, I Am, and like it becomes an interesting conversation because the highs are higher in the beginning, but there's a consistency throughout. To your point with these projects.
Yeah. Shout out to McLovin. He said KD3 is pure fire. We agree. Hope you're loving it all the way through. We agree. Let us know what you think about this project. We're really loving it. Where do you think it stacks in Nas's discography? Has this changed the perception of Nas's discography? Here's the thing, and this is me going to a history lesson. You have to, for the younger hip hop listeners out there, Brian is a student of the game, so it doesn't have to do with youth. It has to do with, just being a student of the game. You're never too old or too young to learn. But I think it's one thing, I would say it's to Brian, it's one thing to be in it, be in the moment, to experience something, to know what it was when Nas came out, his standing in the game through most of the 90s. There was a time at the end of the 90s because of how he was a little more commercial with I Am, and then the album we won't speak about, Nostradamus, excuse me. People was like, yo, he fell off. Like, there was this literal talk about Nas falling off, right? Like, literally people were saying, like, Nas fell off.
Right.
And he comes back, Stillmatic, which most people regard classic album, right? And The Lost Tapes, which is arguably my second favorite Nas project, right? Okay. But this guy came out with Illmatic, and It Was Written, and we still have to get Chantel Shand. We still gotta get you on the podcast because her and I have a little debate. She's in that It Was Written was better than Illmatic camp, and I do not agree with her, but we're going to discuss that.
She is?
She is. Yes, I found this out.
I didn't know that.
I found this out. We were just talking after we did. She came on the NBA Exchange, and I found this out, and I told her the next time we doing something on hip hop, should have probably brought her on for this episode, but we're gonna do this. I said we have to discuss it.
I talked to her this morning. I gotta.
I said we're not gonna delve into it until we get it, but.
It was
when you look at you have the period. You have the period of I Am, Nostradamus. You also have the period post Illmatic, and Godson, because we don't want to forget about that. You got after that, you're talking about Hip Hop Is Dead. Okay, you're talking about the Untitled album,
Streets Disciple, also
Streets Disciple. This is where I'm saying, people, and the EP that Brian will not talk about. All these projects with Hit Boy are better than those albums. It's not even close.
Then Streets Disciple, Hip Hop Is Dead, and Untitled.
Absolutely better than those albums.
Yeah. No,
absolutely. I agree. And I'm taking out Distant Relatives, which is a fantastic classic album, but because it's not a solo album, I'm taking it out. All that's better than all of that. It's better than I Am. It's better, and I Am has songs that I love.
I Am is the one I feel like you'll get a little pushback on. It was
That's
written
fine.
Also, but like I Am, you'll get pushback.
Listen, I'm taking Magic over It Was Written. Okay.
Oh wow.
I'm taking Magic over It's Written. I'm taking it's a tighter, better project. People gonna flame me. I got my flame suit ready, people. I'm taking Magic over it. I might take KD3 over it. I might take 83 over. Here we go. I feel like the flames are coming. I feel like the flames are coming. But I just think that when you look at it, that yes, there's a strong argument. This is the point I'm making, that the work towards 2010 on. I love that you had that line of demarcation, right? Mm-hmm. 2010 on. There's some really, really strong albums. And yes, McLovin, I see you out here. We did not get the original I Am, which is true, because I think that would have changed. And that's a great point McLovin's making here.
We wouldn't have gotten Nostradamus.
Right, because I Am is was supposed to be a double disc, and it got bootlegged, and we didn't get the original I Am, which there is also a point that we would have probably got some of the songs that ended up on the Lost Tapes were supposed to be on that, so we would have got that too, which tells you what the quality of that could have been had we got the original one. So really good point by McLovin there. I agree, that was definitely a factor as well too. But like I said, I think this changes this stuff, because even at 2010, we got to think about where it's at 2010, Brian. People were like, Nas had come back with Stillmatic and Godson, and it was really good, and those albums were really well received. But then there was Hip Hop Was Dead, and there was an Untitled album, and those albums were not received very strongly. Like, it was kind of, like, they're not terrible.
I thought Hip Hop Is Dead was received pretty well, and I remember Untitled got like, did they get a Grammy nomination? They both might have, actually, because Nas had a bunch of Grammy nominations. Grammy is not the. That doesn't mean shit to me. But I'm talking about commercially, like those albums are were at a time where Nas was still regularly going platinum. When that still mattered.
There's never a time where I ever say to myself, "Hey man, let me throw on Hip Hop Is Dead or Untitled." I will play songs from them. but I'll never be like, yo, I'm about to listen to this album all the way through. Yeah, it's never gonna. It just doesn't happen. Streets Disciples in that vein too. It never happens. There's songs I love off of Streets Disciple actually.
Me too. Yeah.
But I'm never gonna be like, yo, I'm just throwing that album on to listen to it. It doesn't happen. And that, I'll tell you what, right now, I've thrown on Magic in the last couple of months to go listen to it. I've thrown on KD1 and KD2, and I'm sure I will do with KD3. I'm confident in that.
Can we stay here for a second? Actually,
yeah.
This is a great point you're making. How many albums? This is like kind of like the cleaning test. Which, if you don't know, Dexter has a cleaning test, which is basically like, do you have to run across the room to skip a song because you need to skip it?
While you're doing some household chore, cleaning the dishes, cleaning the house, washing the dishes, some kind of household chore, it takes time. A lot of people like to throw on music while they do it. So, if an album's bad and a song comes on, you don't like it, you're gonna go to your phone, hit that skip or whatever system situation you have. Are you gonna go do that for a song?
Like that's like every artist has some more than others. Like for Nas, for example, Dr. Knockboot, Zone Out would be two of those. Okay. But this is a good one. How many albums are you putting on and just playing? For most artists, you'll be lucky to get 1, 2, or 3. Nas has a bunch. This is the point that Dexter's making. And it's like Illmatic, you're doing that. You're playing it straight through, whatever the case may be. It was written, I'll put on and listen to it straight through. Now, there are a couple
songs.
So would I.
There are a couple songs I'm not crazy about, but I'll do it.
Yeah, but like I can listen to the whole thing one sitting. I Am also, but I told you, I Am has a high slugging percentage, but man, there are four songs on that album where I'm kind of like, you just don't want to, like, if you're playing that in the car, this is another probably test. This is probably another test. If you're playing that in the car with like people, with like one of your homies or two of your homies, and y'all driving somewhere, you have to skip that song before it comes on. And Dr. Knockboot is one of those on I Am, and then there's a couple others that I can't even think of right now. Stillmatic is an album you could play.
I love how you just skipped over Nostradamus. Yes, I love how you just skipped over that. Yeah.
Stillmatic is an album you could play, but then you don't have another one, to your point, until Distant Relatives, if you're counting.
Well, Godson. Oh
yeah, Godson also. Godson. Then you don't have another one till Distant Relatives.
And Lost Tapes, which we didn't mention as well.
Lost Tapes too. Life is Good. So basically, there's 10. There's basically like 10. There's Illmatic. It was written. I Am. Are we counting I Am?
Yeah, I'm fine. I will throw on I Am and listen to it. There's skippers. It's not.
There's a couple. There's big things also, and I know how you feel about big things. Like there's a couple of egregious skippers in that song. Money Is My Bitch.
That's also getting skipped.
Those are the 4.
Yeah, those. See, and that's the thing. Those are some of the weaker songs. But the thing with I Am is, like you said, it's a high slugging percentage. There's songs that are good, are really good.
He has 4 top 25 Nas songs on the album.
It's enough. What I'm saying is there's at least a day where I could say, I want to listen to this album. I know I'm going to have to skip 4 things, but I still want to listen to this album. I'm saying in the other ones, I don't really feel like there are days where I'm like, man, I want to go hear Hip Hop Is Dead. No. So I want to hear songs from it, but I don't want to hear it.
Illmatic, it was written. We'll put in I Am. Stillmatic, Godson, Lost Tapes. Wait, I messed up. Sorry about that. Illmatic, it was written I Am. Right, that's 3. 4, Stillmatic. Godson, Lost Tapes. That's 6.
Yep.
You don't have a 7th one until. Are we counting Distant Relatives? Even though it's a collab.
No, I'm just talking about solo projects. So no.
Okay, so no. Life Is Good is the next one. That's 10 years after.
Yep.
And then you have these projects.
And see that point? There's a 10-year gap before you're saying you can do that. Yes.
There's 7 until you get to these 4 projects, all of which you can play front to back, no problem.
Right. Even if there's songs. And my point is, like, even if there's songs you will skip on them, like a good album to be enjoyable doesn't have to be perfect all the way through. But it's like, do you want to hear that album? Do you like the sound of it sonically? Do you like the theme? Do you like the collection of music on there? As a whole, yes. And that's what I'm even saying what I Am. It's got 4 songs that are pretty unlistenable to me. But the other parts of it are really good, and it makes me actually want to listen. There's a day I could be like, yeah, I want to go listen to I Am. I Am is not probably in the height of my Nas discography rankings, but it's a really solid project. Listen, I Am is better than like a lot of some people's best work. Right?
Like, it has, again, 4 top. This is Nas we're talking about, and that album, I Am, as low as some of the lows are, has 4 top 25 Nas songs. I will stand by that. Nas is like Hate Me Now, Undying Love,
Undying Love.
and We Will Survive. Those are
Yeah,
4 incredible Nas songs.
all great songs. We didn't even talk about, like, and it had commercial success. We're not even talking about the good singles like You Won't See Me Tonight.
Oh,
Or,
yeah, the
or
joint with Scarface.
New York State of Mind Part 2. IM has good tracks. My point is, I will stand on this point. I'll stand on this hill. Nas, okay, you can tell me that where's the Illmatic, and I don't think Nas had to make another Illmatic because he never could make another Illmatic. He's got Illmatic, and it was written at the top of his career. But when you look at some of the especially the growth and in terms of subject matter and the body of work, Life is Good, all these albums with Hit Boy, right? We're not even counting Distant Relatives. There's really strong work. I think Nas's end of the career is much better than the middle of his career, where there's a lot more question. He had Question from I Am on, came back strong with Stillmatic and Godsend, and then there's kind of average to subpar albums there below that. But then he came back, and it's just, and now he's like rejuvenated, right? Like he seems really rejuvenated, whether it's Hit Boy, whatever it is, New Lease on Life, talking about different subject matter. It's that. So like for me, I'm saying yes, the perception of his discography has changed for me. Because I thought it was once where it was like, yo, there's this really great rapper who then came back and had flashes. And then you kind of like, yo, is he still really inspired? No, inspiration's clearly here.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. And Nas talked about this album. And maybe we'll save this for the What's Next for Nas, because we have like another.
Put this comment up when you get the chance too from Daniel.
But the perception of Nas that doesn't need to be lost, and what should be lost, but people had this, was, oh, yeah, listen, look at this. We got a Dr. Knockboot lover up in here. Daniel Olaranti, he was having fun with Dr. Knockboot. I love it. Daniel, I got a question for you, man. Are you ever sitting around and you're like, man, I want to bump Dr. Knockboot? Like, do you bump Dr. Knockboot and just say, yo, we got to put this on? You got to put this on? And yes, McLovin, you are right. Nas said it himself. He said he wouldn't do that song again. That's how we know. That's how we know. I just want to know if Daniel is like, you're just sitting at the crib and he's like, yo, we got to put on Dr. Knockboot. Like, are you playing that around your lady or your whoever your love interest is? You know, like, I'm just saying, like, I don't feel like Dr. Knockboot gets the mood popping.
I remember some bars from that song that I'm not going to repeat, but it's not my favorite Nas song. I'll put it that way. I love Nas. Nas is my favorite artist of all time. So it's just
we love Nas. This is obviously the A Hard to Tell podcast. We love Nas, but Dr. Knockboot, I do not love. But there's somebody out there that loves it. Daniel, shout out to you. You're out here loving the Dr. Knockboot. What I was gonna say was the other thing, and Nas addressed this on the album, is the perception that, oh, he didn't have an ear for beats and he hasn't picked good production. Look, there was some questionable Nas production taste. I'm not going to sit here and deny that at times. I didn't care. Now, I thought people were way too harsh on him, and in particular, Salaam Remi, who actually has produced some fire. But people were way too harsh on Salaam Remi, yo. Yeah, people were way too harsh on Salaam Remi, and I thought it was way overblown. And B, you've talked about this before, and how people just sometimes run with a narrative. Oh, Nas can't pick beats. He has a bad ear for beats. I think there are projects where the production was inconsistent. I will definitely say that. And particularly in some of those projects we mentioned, like a Hip Hop Is Dead or a Untitled. I think we can agree on that, or a Nostradamus, or even some parts of I Am, like Dr. Knockboot. Yeah. Please tell me you don't like that beat. But I never thought that he couldn't pick good beats. This man had an ear for the stuff that was on Illmatic, and it was written, which are very well-produced albums. And obviously locking in with a producer like Hit Boy, I think we can get rid of that argument. I don't think anybody's going to be out here looking at Nas's career talking about, man, he had a bad ear for beats. He just had 4 albums in 2 years with really damn good production. So I think we could pump the brakes and put that to rest a little bit. All right, you ready? Can we talk about the standout tracks? Because we got to get out of here.
Before we wrap this up. So standouts for me.
Yes.
I will kick this off because I have a bunch. Ghetto Reporter, I'm going to let you talk about that one more because I know how much you love Ghetto Reporter. But I will say that, Dex, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. The first verse on Ghetto Reporter is one of the best verses on the album. And we've talked about how great Nas is at starting albums. If you look throughout all his great albums, all of which we just talked about, they have a great intro. Even with Illmatic, if you want to say the intro is Genesis, fine. If you want to say it's New York State of Mind, fine. Either way, great intro, and you continue to move forward. You got It Was Written. There's the intro there, intro that's really good. And then you also have The Message, which I believe is the first song that actually starts off the album. So like this is a trend throughout his career. The Stillmatic intro is one that we've talked about, etc. So Ghetto Reporter just sort of keeps that trend going. You also have Thun, which is, to me, as I mentioned earlier in this, maybe some people missed it, it's kind of like Death Row East Part 2, more underground version. It's really, really good. One of my favorites. 30, where he has the little shot at Pete Rock. Pete Rock is kind of suing him over like royalties from the World Is Yours, I believe. So there's a bit of a suit going on there. And then Nas kind of like clap back in this bar. But I thought 30 was one of the best songs on here. Reminisce felt like a song that could have been on Life Is Good very easily. Reminisce was a song that I liked about a lot. And you mentioned earlier, like he was just sort of going back and looking at certain situations, how he handled things. I feel like we got a lot more storytelling on this album than we got on the last Kings of Seas, which is something that is great because Nas is one of the best storytellers we've had in this genre. My favorite beat change, this is not one of my 5 favorite songs, but this is my favorite beat change because there were a couple on this album. WTF SMH.
Can we stop there real quick? Because
listen, I was nervous.
I was nervous about the title of that song. And the way it starts, I'm like, I don't know, Nas. This might be one of these, like, you try to be cool when you're 49 and it's like it don't work. But no, it delivers. It delivers.
Once a Man, Twice a Child was like, I texted you, second childhood, all grown up. It's kind of like, it kind of reminded me a lot of that, but 20 years later. Beef, Agreed. Which we just talked about, what as far as the last half, because I feel like the first half of this project is better than the last half of this project. Beef is one of my favorites on the last half. And then Till My Last Breath, the Narco Flip, the Edwin Diaz, the New York Mets infusion, the Latino flavor, the trumpet in the background. Just that's the song that I've played the most. I've played that song relentlessly. It's not even my favorite song on the album, but it's the one that I've played the most because that shit is just hard, and I need some of that in my music. So Till My Last Breath. Those are my my standouts.
I like your standouts. Sorry guys, I had to get like a candy imp in here. But McLovin says top 5. You got Legit, Thun, Get Light, Beef, Michael, and Quincy. Okay, I can rock with that. And then our man Daniel, he came back up in here to talk about Dr. Napu. The subject matter is why I don't like Dr. Napu. For me, great lesson. Listen, Daniel, I will say this. There is a great lesson there. I won't disagree with you on there. Stay ready. This is pretty much always stay ready. You know what I'm saying?
Daniel, you make an interesting point.
You make an interesting point there, Dan. I can give credit where credit is due. Stay ready. Like, stay ready. That's the message. You guys stay ready out here. He's absolutely right. Back to the standout tracks. For me, Ghetto Reporter.
Yes.
Great way to kick off the album. Totally agree with Brian in the fact that this is the opening verse is one of the best verses. And I get excited about Nas intros, like Brian said. And when Nas just comes out with that energy, I still think my favorite Nas intro is the Stillmatic intro. I sometimes just play that song to get myself. It just gives me good energy. But Ghetto Reporter is really good. And I just think it's a fantastic album in terms of what it's able to do. So I love Ghetto Reporter. It's just absolutely great. Legit. Brian, this song, when I first heard it, I was just like, the sample was infectious to me. I love the sample. For people who don't know, it's a sample from the 5 Heartbeats movie in there in the opening, one of the singing performances, and it's looped throughout it. I love the sample there. Absolutely fantastic. Thun is a great song. And I got to put this back on the 2 screen with Brian here because My man Vic said this to me the other day. I was playing it, riding around, and he said, "Yo, anytime you get Nas on some song where he's like reminiscing about his days in Queensbridge, you know it's gonna be fire." And I was like, I started thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, you're right.
Some of the best songs from the Lost Tapes too. He was doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nas is in his bag. It's flowing great. Love the lines with the J, Eat the Takeover title. Black unity coming together. It's good. I loved it. Also, opening bars on Legit, I must say. Getting blacker than Black Panther 2. I like that. To kick off the song. I was like, okay, I get where we're going here. So that's great. Love Thun as well, too. Thun is fantastic. Michael and Quincy, really good song. Love the second half with the beat change. Love the Mike Jack references sprinkled throughout the verse. Really good. I also really like 30. I'm in agreement with Brian. This is a grown-up 27 Summers, although I like the beat on 27 Summers a little bit. Yeah, one track that I really like here, because I just like the sound of it. It gives me that 70s blaxploitation vibe. Recession Proof. Really like that song. Good vibe. Really like that one as well, too. Another standout for me. I haven't actually did find out what the sample was on this. I was looking it up earlier. I'm trying to remember exactly the song it is right now, but it is Shy Lights. I'm Not a Gambler. Is sampled on I'm on Fire, which is fantastic. I love the sample in that. Actually feels like some old Kanye production here. Obviously, you know, Kanye mentored.
Who?
Who? He whose name we shall not speak of was a mentor to Hit Boy. But I love the production on this. I love the theme that Nas focuses on about him still being hot. Really good production here. Also, fantastic job, Hit Boy. You also got the vocals from the announcer from NBA Jam in the background to say, I'm on fire.
I noticed
that.
Very
well done. Great touch there, Hit Boy. Salute, fantastic.
That's one of my favorite beats on the whole project.
If anybody knows me, I'm a huge fan of NBA Jam. It's one of my favorite games. You can also see it right here behind me. That's one of my favorite games, so I like that. I thought that was fantastic. Next up for me, there was one that, WTF SMH. Like Brian, was really nervous about this. Where were you going, Nas? What was the subject matter could be? First time I heard it, I wasn't crazy about the beat too much. The first beat, I wasn't really crazy about it. Like, I was kind of like, I don't know. But that beat switch, when it gets to the soul sample, I got to look up that sample because I have not looked it up yet to see what it is. But when that comes on and the way Nas is just skating over that part of the beat, man, that was really good. Really like that. Next up for me, Once a Man, Twice a Child is a fantastic song. I think it's very much in perspective for a lot of people as you get older, just thinking about life. It's such a true saying, once a man, twice a child, and it makes you think about your mortality and where you are and how you need to enjoy the most out of life. I think Nas closes the song with a bar that's pretty dope, which is you'll never be younger, or a line I should say that's pretty dope. You'll never be younger than you are today. Really something to think about there. A track I really like on this album, and I can see why you do not, this was not one of your choices, Brian, but I think if you're 35 and older, Get Light. Get Light is good. It's got that throwback New York feel. I love the horns in that.
No, I like it a lot.
Jazzy. You did like it? Okay.
I didn't want to name the whole album. You know, I gotta have a cutoff at some point.
You gotta have it. Get Light has been. I've been giving that a lot of play.
I even it's not on my nitpicky skips list, which is only 2 songs. But like, you know, neither of us have mentioned those 2 songs yet, so I'm just gonna stay quiet until we get to that point.
Yeah. We can get to the nitpicky list, but Daniel. There you go, Daniel. You've redeemed yourself. Get Light for this Christmas. I like it. You gotta play Get Light this Christmas. Can't be playing Dr. Dapu. That's you can't. You know that's so you got it. My other standout track. I mean, you're right. I could go through the whole stuff, but my other standout track, I actually really like First Time as well. First Time is really good. Talking about the first time people heard Nas, the first time Nas heard other artists. Shout out to Kendrick on there for Nas about the first time you heard him. That's really good. Beef, as I mentioned before, really good song. Don't Shoot. But the ones that are getting high replay value for me, Legit, Thun, Ghetto Reporter, Recession Proof, I'm on Fire, WTF SMH, Get Lighted First Time. I'm probably playing those really a lot right now, and I'm just loving the sound of all of it. So those are my standout tracks. All right, what's your nitpick? What are you nitpicking on?
Okay, so there's a couple songs we haven't mentioned at all. Serious Interlude. I feel like that's one where you're kind of like, I mean, I won't skip it, but I don't need it necessarily. Like if I want to get to I'm on Fire a little bit faster, no, McLovin, we love the bonus track. That was one of my favorite. I mentioned.
Oh
it
yeah,
earlier.
my bad. We love the bonus track. We love the
Till My
bonus track.
Last Breath is this. That's the song I'm playing the most on this album so far. Because again, as a Met fan, as a Puerto Rican, as an Edwin Diaz fan, Nas from Queens, as a Nas fan, this is the hardest song. This is the hardest song on the album. This is the hardest song on the album to me. Not the best song, but the hardest one. Like
we're vibing with that song. We're vibing with that.
And I can say this because as someone who got his driver's license not that long ago, I get in the car, I'm putting that shit on. Look, for New Yorkers, we don't all get it at like 17 or 16 or 15 or whatever. Some of y'all get it in like Florida and shit. You know what I mean? How you feel about Hood to Hood?
That's another one for me. We're on that.
Those are the two for me: Serious Interlude and Hood to Hood. I like Hood to Hood, but for me, there's a reason why I said the first 5 tracks started like it's Ghetto Reporter, Legit, Done, Michael and Quincy, then 30, and then you go to Hood, which I think Hood to Hood is really good. I probably would have put it like later on in the album, but I probably wouldn't have it in the album altogether. Just have 14 and then the bonus make it 15.
Yeah,
Hood to Hood and Serious Interlude are the two for me where I'm kind of like, they're okay.
I think those are the absolute definite 2 weakest songs on the album for sure. For me, I if you had took this off and you had got it down to 15 total or 14 on a bonus track, I would have been very fine with that. That's my range usually is 12 to 14, and I do think
10 to 14, really
10 to 14. And I do think that's what knocks this album down a little bit for me. Obviously below like a Magic. I think I could have had it a little bit tighter. I felt the same way about King's Disease 2. I probably actually had more on King's Disease 2 that I would have took out. Actually, probably 4 that I would have taken out on King's Disease 2. They're like 3 to 4. But here, definitely Hood to Hood and
Daniel.
Serious.
Were you here earlier in the show when I made that connection? Daniel comment said Till My Last Breath kind of sounds like Spicy a little bit.
Yeah. He missed that.
For me, it's a better version of Spicy, a lot better for me personally. But I like Spicy, but I like Till My Last Breath a lot more. But Dex, your point about the skips, like in King's Disease 1, I didn't really have any skips. I just thought that some songs were kind of like it was like the definition. I'm probably not gonna go back and hear it. I'll play it when I play in the album play through, but I'm not ever going to go to just the definition by itself. I
think those songs pass the cleaning test. Like I'm not running across the room to be like,
we're nitpicking here, guys. We're nitpicking.
Yeah, we're just nitpicking. I think I think it would have been even a stronger album had I made it just a little bit tighter and took some of those songs off. But like, look, listen, even on those songs, Nas is spitting. I see Magnificent setting here. He's banging on repeat because the lyrics are amazing. Nas is bringing it, man. Like there's no doubt about that here. It's not like he's not bringing it at all. So, we can nitpick. This is how far we're nitpicking on these projects with Hit Boy, where it's like, okay, yeah, these songs are, maybe not as up to par, but they're not whack by any means. They're not like, oh man, we're not trying to hear this. Like it's not like that at all whatsoever.
So since we got to get out of here in a couple minutes.
We got a couple minutes.
The last thing to do would be to just rate this. Now it's only been a weekend. So
and I always like to sit with it a little more than that.
I want to sit with it a little more, but we kind of have to do it. You know what I mean? Just how we're feeling right now. To bring it back, I think we both had King's Disease at an 8.5 out of 10.
Yes.
Or I was at 8.5, you were an 8, something like that.
I think I was at an 8.
King's Disease 2, I was at an 8. And I think you were also at about an 8. And then Magic, I think I was at a 9. You may have been higher.
I think I said 9.5. I think I said 9.5.
You may have been higher.
I might say 10 now, but I think that album's great. At 9.5, I would say. I think of this, I'm at like an 8.5 on this.
That's where I'm at right now. Because the first 8 tracks are a 9, the last 8 are an 8, and then the bonus. I just love the bonus, so I just go 8.5.
Yeah, I think it's strong 8.5.
But I also think it's better than the first. I think it's better than both King's Diseases, so I'm probably gonna say like I might go 9 with McLovin here, who comments this is 9 out of 10.
McLovin also agrees with me that Magic is a 10. Magic is fire.
Magic is a legit.
Magic is fire, bro.
That's the thing. Magic is to me that's one of the best EPs that I've heard
in a while too. Like there's some good EPs I've heard in the last couple years, but this is really good.
Yeah, like and King's Disease 3, like it's like to me, Magic is in a different category where like to me that's a classic EP. That's a legit classic EP. Is King's Disease or any of the King's Diseases classics? I think this is where it's like on their by themselves are they classics? I feel like maybe time has to tell for definitely for King's Disease 3, whatever.
Right.
I think this is a classic series. The King's Disease trilogy.
I think it's a classic series. I think it's
usually sequels
don't deliver
in
hip hop history.
Right. Usually sequels don't deliver historically. We know this. We've seen this with how many artists try to like recreate and do second parts of one's classic album. I love Raekwon. I love Raekwon. Only built for Cuban Links 2. I have it. Hard copy. It's right over there. Not as good as part 1. You know what I mean?
Not many people do series well. That is a great point. And the only
what was the one that there was an album that they did a continuation of Method Man, Ghost, and Raekwon. I'm forgetting what it was, but that was a part 2 of something also. But continue.
The only series of albums that I've loved, and I still think there's one that's clearly better than the others,
Blueprint?
is the Blueprint. And like Blueprint 2, huh?
I think this is a better series than the Blueprint.
I would agree. Even though I would say Blueprint's the best album out of all of anything in there.
Probably, yeah.
This is the better series because it's more consistent all the way through. What hurt Blueprint and Jay and to get in the side thing really quick, is that Blueprint 2 probably never should have been a double disc. It should have been tightened as one. If it had been, it would have been a lot better because the Curse disc has got a lot of fire on it. Blueprint 3 it's good, but I don't think it's as good as I like Blueprint 3 actually more than some people do. It's not as good as that.
I think it's an overrated album. We don't have to
talk about that. We'll talk about that another day.
If you're ranking those 6, and if we could quibble about like whether or not Jay-Z has a top spot,
it's last of those 6.
Most people would say Jay-Z has a top spot with Blueprint 1, but I would say he definitively has 5 and 6 with Blueprint 2 and Blueprint 3. Like because I think
I don't disagree with that though.
Yeah, I would say that. So, but
I don't disagree with that.
But I think
I don't disagree with that. It's tough. Blueprint 2 is really, 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 really good songs, but there's also some really skippers on there too.
I like Guns N' Roses a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like that's one of my favorite joints on there. But like to me, King's Disease is a classic series. I hesitate to say whether or not any of the albums are classic albums. I feel like, but maybe that's contradictory in itself. I don't know. I feel like what I'm saying makes sense though. You know?
What you're saying is this series of albums, this grouping of albums, even if you want to put Magic into the project, into 2, it's an important moment in hip hop for what Nas did, and that's what matters, right?
For rappers who are aging, yes.
And I'm glad you brought that point up at the top of the show, which is that a lot of times in hip hop, we don't give love or give the flowers to rappers, or we think somehow rappers are going to fall off. Nas's pen hasn't fallen off here. His flow hasn't fallen off here. My boy Anthony, who's a huge shout out to my man Anthony, who's a huge Nas fan. He hit me up the other day. He's like, "Yo, why are we not talking Nas like he's not still the best rapper in the game?" He was like, "For me, it's him and Kendrick." He was like, "Who's rapping better right now?" And I think he makes a fair point. And I think we look at this thing as like, oh, because he's not, and I'll get to another point we'll get to real quick before we get out of here, because some people may say he's not young or he's not relevant, then this is why he gets dismissed of that. Real quick, speaking of not being relevant, did you see what 21 Savage had to say?
No.
21 Savage is out here saying that Nas is not relevant. He was on, I want to get this correctly, he was on, I think, like a Twitter Spaces or something, and was asked about it and said that, Nas, he was a guest on Clubhouse. I guess this was. I didn't know people were still
It
doing that.
wasn't Twitter Spaces. It was
It wasn't Twitter
Clubhouse.
Spaces. It was
Who the
Clubhouse.
fuck is still on Clubhouse?
I didn't know people were still doing that. So the topic conversation was rap music from the 90s still being relevant or not. And he asked, who the co-host asked, so who can still drop an album right now, or 21 Savage said that, and the co-host said Jay-Z, Too Short, E40, Scarface, among others. And then there was a reaction about Nas' King's Disease 3, and this is a quote from 21 Savage. He's not relevant. He just is a loyal fan base. He still makes good music. So somebody asked him, well, what do you mean by relevancy? Which the response was,
he just won a Grammy.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not going to spend too much. I'm not going to spend too much time
like,
on this.
I don't play the commercial game, but
Right.
It's like I can't call someone who wins a Grammy irrelevant. That's crazy.
Right. I agree. And I'm not all into like awards validate everything or do anything. But
they
Nas,
don't, because the Grammys are a shit show. And Nas should have had a Grammy. But yeah.
Real quick, and then we got a last question before we get out of here. For those who know, and I'm not going to get into calling this real hip hop. I'm not saying any of that. Those who know, okay? I think 21 Savage, a lot might have gone to his head because he just dropped a joint album with Drake, and he's probably seen more streams than he's ever seen before. Not that he hasn't had a lot of streams, but it's got. What did you say?
I said, is he relevant by himself?
Yeah. But those who know what this means in hip hop, who listening or seeing what Nas is doing, seeing how he's spitting, seeing the quality level of work he's doing. Those who know, Nas is very relevant and he'll be fine. Nas is doing a show where he'll be performing all the songs from King's Disease one night only at MSG in February. Tickets go on sale tomorrow. Your boy's trying to get some. He wants to be there. You know why? And it's going to sell out real quick because he's relevant. Right. That's why. That's all I got to say. Because he's relevant. It'll sell out in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And you'll see those resale tickets are going to be nuts. Yeah, because he's relevant. All right.
And it's not just because it's New York. Like he still sells out venues internationally. Like,
real quick, we got one last question. And I also want to thank everybody who's been checking in and commenting. McLovin, Daniel, appreciate y'all for doing it. And Daniel, you should be a podcast producer, my friend. You should be a podcast producer. Why? Because you knew exactly what the next question and final question was going to be. Daniel asked, what's next for Nas and Hit Boy? Is it over? Are there more albums to come? Daniel, who's checking in from Nigeria, says, we don't even know 21 Savage in Nigeria. Shout out to Nigeria and good for y'all. Y'all out here listening to good. Shout out to the motherland. We appreciate y'all.
Always shout out to Nigeria.
Shout out to our Nigerian brothers and sisters.
Yes, sir.
We were going to talk about what's next for Nas. And Daniel also asked with Hit Boy, which I think is a fair question too. But what is next for Nas? Is it the premiere album? Is it Nas taking a little bit of a break because he's done 4 albums in 2 years? Is it him being so rejuvenated he wants to do more of this and create the music he wants? What do you see as next for Nas, B? What do you think he's going to do next?
I cop-out answer. I think he's going to do what he wants because that's what he's been doing. But I also think like he doesn't need to do anything else for a little bit. He doesn't need to do anything else ever, really. Like if we want to be honest about it, but he's gonna like if he loves it, because clearly he's not doing it because he needs money or whatever. Like we've heard about how successful his investments have been, and he's listening to the right people, and he's staying out of trouble, so he's doing the things he needs to do, and it's just kind of doing this because he wants to. And you hear that, you feel that. So for me, what I'd like to see next is like, yo, take a year off unless you want to drop something the year you turn 50, which makes sense. And maybe it's a song. I don't know if it needs to be a little 2-pack or 3-pack or something. For me, what I want next is I want the premiere project. If Nas and Hit Boy want to keep going, like I'm not like, okay, that's fine, obviously. But I think this is a good place to table it for now and have Nas focus on like, yo, if he wants to just get with producers for the rest of his life, just let me do one with Premier, let me do one with RZA, let me do, you know what I mean? Like if he just wants to do that, like I'm not gonna be mad at that. Or let me do a series with Premier, a trilogy with Premier now. That'd be great if he wants to work on that over the next few years. But for me, that's the project I want next. Is I want Nas and Primo, 10 songs, 12 songs, whatever. I don't care. But Nas and Primo is what I want next. Alchemist is a great suggestion from McLovin. I would also say Static Selector. Like there's a lot of good producers that feel like Nas could just lock in with that we've seen him work with before, but do a whole project with. I feel like Hit Boy's opened that up, and I think we'll see him with, you know, maybe solo with some producers moving forward. But for me, definitely DJ Premier should be next.
Yeah, Premier will be next for me. I like the idea of him doing stuff even with other producers. You mentioned Static. Alchemist will be really good. Obviously, he's done some other work with Alchemist and Lost Tapes too. Book of Rhymes as well too. Another good Alch beat he's been over. The Premier thing is high on my list because it's been high on my list pretty much all my life. I'm 39 years old and I've been waiting for this album for a long time. I've been a Nas fan since I was 10, 11 years old. I've been waiting for that for a long time. I love Nas and Premier. I think they might arguably, although Hit Boy might have something to say about that, but in terms of just tracks being made, some of the best rapper producer chemistry we've ever heard. I would ask for one thing I would love if he does the Nas Premier album. I would like a Jay feature on that. I think Nas and Jay on over some Primo. I could be fine from that. Okay. The two of them, I love both of them over Primo. I love probably Nas more over Primo, but you give me Nas and Jay in the same track with Primo, I'm good. If you want to talk about Next for Nas, the other thing I think too is, and I was talking about this with somebody recently, I went to see Usher in Vegas for residency. It was fantastic a couple months ago. I like to see a hip-hop residency in Vegas, and I think Nas is the person that could do it. I'd really love to see Nas lock in and do a bunch of shows exclusively, doing some of his best work for maybe a year or so. I know it's been off and on with Usher been doing it over the past 18 months to 2 years. I think Nas could do it. I think that would be great for him. I think it will be fantastic. But Brian makes a good point. Nas don't need to do a damn thing. Nas has given us so much music, and Nas's playlist or trying to make a top 25 or top 50 from Nas is so great. He doesn't need to do another damn thing, and he'll be fine. His place is cemented in hip-hop history. He's one of the greats. We should salute him, give him his flowers. I'm happy for what he's doing for the culture right now, hip-hop culture. I'm happy that he's still rapping at a very high level. I think that matters a lot, and I think we need to appreciate that, salute that, and just be happy that we've witnessed one of the greatest, if not the greatest rapper of all time, person who made Illmatic, who's continuing to give us good music and doing it on his terms. I think that's just beautiful, the freedom that you can see in what he's doing. So, yeah, I'm fine for whatever he does, but first and foremost, I love the Premier album. I would not mind the Magic 2. I would not be opposed to that. But, like, look, we're going to close here, but this run with Hit Boy has been fantastic. We were supposed to talk NBA today. We're not even going to get to talk to that. This was an all hip-hop show.
Nah, we can say that.
NBA
is going to be going on for a while. Nas just dropped his album. Nas deserves his flowers. Hit Boy too. Hit Boy as well. Hit Boy could be produced. Nas and Hit Boy dropped albums in 3 straight years that could contend for album of the year. Hit Boy could contend for producer of the year. Nas could contend for lyricist of the year. Like this is an epic classic run of collaborations that nobody expected a few years ago. Like Nas and Hit Boy sounded very random. People were nervous before the first King's Disease dropped, and now look at where we are.
Yep, nobody expected that years ago, but it's been great. Great show. We are back, episode 229 of the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. You know how to follow us at AHTT Podcast on Twitter, on Instagram. Follow us, the whole thing. We'll have clips from this up. The audio will be up after. We thank everybody for checking with us live. Shout out to Daniel. Good questions. We won't hold it against you that you like Dr. Notboot. We appreciate you checking from Nigeria. McLovin, thank you for checking in. Everybody, hit the like button on this episode. Share it to the people everywhere. We appreciate you. And we're going to talk a lot more hip hop, a lot more sports in the coming weeks. We got a lot to talk about, other things that Brian and I have been up to. Some other announcements will be coming soon. We have a lot to talk about. So next week we'll be back. And we really enjoy doing these live with the fans because it's always good to interact with people. So we appreciate y'all. We are nothing without y'all if you do not watch and share and like and do all that other good stuff. He is Bryan Fonseca. We both are loving this KD3 album. Probably going to go bump this out as I go to see Black Panther 2. Going to go check that out, and we'll talk about that next week when we're back. I'm Dexter Henry. Until next time, y'all.
Yep.
Peace.